Hello and welcome to my Cozy Witchy Books recommendation video. First of all, cozy means something different for each of us. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page of kind of how I'm defining cozy as far as my book recommendations. So the first thing is we're looking for a really comfortable setting. We're talking small towns or a remote manor or a little cottage that has an herb garden. So that seems to be a general theme through these book choices. I also think that a romanticized, beautiful setting helps, right? So some of the books are set in Ireland, for instance, and for someone who doesn't live in Ireland, that's just a beautiful, magical, lush setting. We also might have like bookstores or apothecaries or bakeries or any of those kinds of comfortable places that a lot of us introverts seek out. Additionally, I find that a lot of the books that I would label as cozy have found family. So they might actually be blood relatives, but there is a found family feel throughout it. And a lot of times they're people who aren't technically family, but they have developed very close-knit relationships, and that is at the core of the coziness. Additionally, we have compelling characters that for the most part you feel like you can trust. These are not books where you're thinking, is this an unreliable narrator? Can I actually trust this person? I also think that there's not a lot of morally gray main characters in a cozy novel. You really do get a feel for their true, genuine self, and they're authentic to their actions. And that to me just feels very cozy. And then lastly, there are typically themes of healing and heartbreak that is sort of broken anew and then melded back together in this alchemical way that just feels so magical and safe and like, oh, they've come through the other side. And additionally, it's not like there's a lot of high fantasy or, a lot of complex magic systems. It's pretty set on like potions and herbs and maybe some spells and things that are kind of simple to reflect a more simple, slower life. So the first two books that I want to suggest are both by Lucy Jane Wood. They are Rewitched, which came out last year, and Uncharmed, which just came out. In Rewitched, we definitely have that small town feeling. We have that bookstore setting as our main character, Bella, works in a bookstore. And so this little town, she's visiting like a coffee shop as she's going through her everyday life. We get a description of her apartment and what her life is like, and you really can just visualize it. And so those sensory details where we're being described the smell of the cinnamon tea are just an integral part to making this cozy. And again, with that idea of her apartment, it really does feel like this homey, witchy book, as Bella is a witch who is learning more about her powers. She didn't really, up until she was 30, have a lot of meaningful and fulfilling use for her magic. It was more kind of simple and just kind of home spells that she was doing. And when she comes close to turning 30, the stakes do get a little bit higher. We definitely have found family in here. As our main character, Bella, approaches her birthday, she ends up getting a mentor who's like an older gentleman. She's got other caretakers around her that are kind of watching out for her. And so this is a very cozy novel to choose. I will say, however, Uncharmed, which just came out this year, recently, within the last couple months, to me, this is like the epitome of cozy, witchy novels. So if you're looking for that vibe, to me, this is it. I really enjoyed this, but I thought the pacing in this was fantastic. I thought the found family was fantastic. We have Annie, who's our main character. She owns a bakery, and she mixes in little spells and potions into the baked goods depending on what her customers need. She's got a staff that's actually really lovely, but that's not actually the main story. The main story is that Annie ends up having a mentee, a young girl that she is needing to train because this young girl has very powerful witchy abilities, but is not able to control it. And I mean, the found family in this is just immaculate. And, when we talk about the setting, I know I mentioned the bake shop, but Annie and her mentee end up going to this like remote little log cottage. She comes in, it's like run down, and she does her little spells and like cleans it up and makes it nice and brings some pink feminine charm to it. And it's just, to me, it's just the coziest. There is a light romance. I think actually I liked the romance better in this as well. And so again, for that other component that we talked about where we've got themes of like heartbreak and healing, that is absolutely in this. Annie is really struggling with a need for perfectionism. And we really delve into that. It's just a beautiful healing journey that Annie is on. So if you're looking for a cozy, witchy book that has just incredible vibes, cannot recommend Uncharmed enough. I read Salt and Broom by Sharon Lynn Fisher earlier this year. And here are some of the things that I had to say about it when I first read it. This is a witchy Jane Eyre retelling. What Sharon Lynn Fisher does in Salt and Broom is she cuts out kind of the childhood experiences, and we just start the story at Lowood with Mr. Brocklehurst, who is the headmaster of the school, and she's got some friends there at the school, and we really start off with getting the letter from Mr. Rochester requesting a witch from Lowood. So Lowood is sort of underground known as a school that does produce witches. It's not something that's widely known, but Mr. Rochester, because Thornfield is in that same general area, is aware that there are witches and he is in need of a witch. We have Jane Eyre, with the last name spelling different. She goes to Thornfield and she meets Mrs. Fairfax, who's just so kind and sweet. There are a lot of similarities as well, not only with the headmaster and Lowood and Thornfield and some of the characters there, but her initial meeting with Mr. Rochester results in him falling off of his horse. We have Jane in the original book who's kind of referred to as a sprite. We know that she's not, but Sharon Lynn Fisher really kind of leans into that idea of like, what if Jane Eyre is, has magical abilities? When she comes to Thornfield, she's given this cottage. It's like a witch's cottage. There's herbs hanging. It just sounds so cozy. She has a familiar, Sybil, who is a white cat. The descriptions of it are just so, it starts in October. It's very autumnal vibes, but the description of the cottage and of Jane Eyre's sort of herby, green witch, kitchen witch kind of potions and spells that she does are just really what, to me, make this feel cozy. There is a mystery in this, which I found, really tied in well with that Jane Eyre retelling of the mystery surrounding Mr. Rochester. There are a lot of Jane Eyre inspired scenes in this where Mr. Rochester falls off his horse and just other experiences like that where you can just see glimpses of the original story in this. I thought Sharon Lynn Fisher did a really good job of kind of peeling away the childhood parts and some of the harder parts that I think would have made this less cozy. And she really just focused on that Thornfield Hall, Mr. Rochester mystery and experience, leaned into Jane Eyre being a witch. Like, what if she could solve the mystery using her witchy skills? And I think that's what really made this a fantastic retelling. There are definitely some darker themes in here as we are, solving the mystery. But again, I feel like that really does connect with Jane Eyre and the darker themes in Jane Eyre. And so I think this is a great option if you're looking for just that like little bit of spooky but cozy and also very wholesome romance. I loved that about this. I didn't have to worry about like, were we going to get into open door romance and spice? It was very wholesome and clean, and I really recommend this book as an option as well. So next we have one of my favorite authors ever, and she's just, more I read of her, the more esteemed she becomes, and that is Mary Stewart. I read Thorny Hold last year for Spencer September and really feel like this again is a quintessential cozy witch story. It's not very long, but it really does pack a punch. We've got Thorny Hold, which is this charming, secluded cottage that's in the English countryside. And we have a young woman who comes to inhabit this. And there is mystery and intrigue among the people in the community. And it's also about our main character really kind of settling into some gentle witchy powers. And it's not this sort of overt witchiness like some of our other books that I've mentioned are. It's more of like this subtle witchy thread that goes through this. So we've got the found family, which is like neighborhood children, for instance. There are certain birds that seem to have a connection, other animals that really have a connection. And so that's what our main character's kind of found family is. There are some humans, but it also is a connection with animals, which is lovely. And we do have again, a healing process because we see Gilly, who's our main character, really kind of like recognizing certain signs from her childhood that have led her to this cottage and to kind of uncover some things from her past that need explaining. As we stay in the Mary Stewart theme, I had to mention this middle grade book called The Little Broomstick. There is a anime, I don't know if it's Studio Ghibli or not, I can't remember, but it's called Mary and the Witch's Flower. I know it was on Netflix earlier this year. I'm not sure if it's still there, but that was inspired by The Little Broomstick, but I do think The Little Broomstick is better than Mary and the Witch's Flower. So we have young Mary. She is staying in her aunt's house. Mary finds a mysterious flower that eventually ends up leading her to a broomstick and setting her on this journey of being a witch and ending up at a school and all of that. So we have her cat Tib who joins her. And here's the school. It's just a lovely, cozy little middle grade story. You can see the print is pretty big. But this is pretty action-packed and exciting and is a perfect choice if you want to read something that it has a little bit more of a fantasy element to it, but stays within that cozy, witchy element. Another cozy, witchy middle grade book that I wanted to suggest, if you haven't read it yet, is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This also has a Studio Ghibli version of it, and it does deviate from the original story. And so I think the book is significantly more cozy. So this also has fantasy elements, more so than The Little Broomstick, where we've got obviously a moving castle. We have Calcifer, who is a flame and a fire, who has abilities and can communicate. We've got Sophie, and while there is a witch in this book, Sophie, I consider also as somebody who's developing her powers throughout this book. And so I think she also brings a witchy element to it. There is mystery. We're trying to sort of unpack some things that have gone on to understand why certain things are happening. And so again, if you're looking for a little bit more fantasy and more of a middle grade feel, then Howl's Moving Castle is a perfect cozy witchy choice. So the rest of the stack have a little bit more of a darker, heavier theme to them. So if you're looking for a little bit less cozy, then these would be choices. I still think they are cozy books, but again, they're a little bit darker. So I have The Dark Witch by Nora Roberts. So I don't see a lot about Nora Roberts on BookTube. I don't know she's very prolific between her romance novels and her J.D. Robb novels. I mean, she's just very prolific. And so I don't know if there's just like oversaturation of information about her out there where people are just like not interested. But I've not read a lot. I've read one other Nora Roberts other than this series. And I just really loved this series. And so I wanted to recommend it. So this is book 1 of the Cousins O'Dwyer trilogy. I did read all 3, but this I think is the best one. And I think you can just read it and be satisfied. So when we talk about the cozy setting, this is following Iona, who moves to Ireland. And so this lush setting with this cottage, and they're actually, the found family consists of actual cousins, and so they are blood relatives, but they didn't know each other, and so that's found. And then she lives in this community, and she's developing friendships and relationships with other people. The other, I think, part of the found family is that she connects up with a horse stable, and she takes care of the horses. And so there's like this everyday descriptions of brushing the horses and caring for the horses and riding the horses, in addition to the apothecary herb witch education that she is getting in the cottage with her cousins. So there is a dark force that is at work that's a little bit spooky in this. And then I also have to say there is a bit of open door romance in this. I skipped past it. I feel like it was only maybe 1 or 2 pages, and it certainly is not explicit, but it is open door. You do know what's happening, and there are some descriptions. But I did like the romance, and I loved the found family. The setting to me is the best part of this. But it is a good option for like your cozy, witchy book choice. Okay, so The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong kicks off with a setting of a caravan that is traveling from small village to small village. And in it, we have Tao, who is a fortune teller. And so she's not technically a witch, but her abilities that are increasingly, that we're made aware of as we read through this story, we're like learning what they are. They feel very witchy. They feel less like a mage and more like a witch. And so that's why I wanted to include this one. I love the cat images that are on the sprayed edges of this. So in addition to having the caravan that's traveling village to village, she ends up collecting her found family. And so this little tribe, they all have issues. So we are dealing with that healing and the heartbreak. Some of them are a little bit more serious than others, but she does collect a baker who comes along and is like baking food for them, in addition to like a caravan and the villages and all of that. So this does have fantasy elements in it. So we've got a lot of different creatures in this that are usually found in fantasy books. So it is a little bit more fantasy, but we've got a quest and a journey. We've got healing. We've got the found family who they really bond together. And we do have Tao, who has these witchy kind of abilities. I consider this to just really have like this like warm, kind-hearted tone to it. Acceptance among your friends, and it just is a lovely tale. So next I wanted to share Green Teeth by Molly O'Neill. So Green Teeth herself is not the witch. Green Teeth is an old folklore of basically like a water monster that lives in different lakes. And so Green Teeth needs to be in or near water. And at the beginning of the book, we have a witch who is being persecuted by her community and being told that she's going to drown, just as like, you know, during the witch trials, that was something that a lot of people tried to do, was to drown a witch. And if they couldn't drown, then they were definitely a witch. And so then they would use rocks to kind of weigh them down. Anyway, it's a bit morbid. But Green Teeth is in her little lake. And she hears all this commotion, and there is a witch, a real, you know, true blue witch, who is being executed by her community. Jenny Greenteeth decides to save the witch, and it sets her on a path of her own healing, of the witch's healing. They really have to work together to trust each other. They end up befriending a goblin. So again, we have that found family situation. The setting is Jenny Greenteeth's little cave. She's got things that she's collected and has made it kind of homey. And so that setting just feels very comforting to the witch as she's like trying to recover from this traumatic experience. She's had to leave her family and try to save them, her children and her husband. And Jenny Greenteeth decides that she is going to help them. Again, this is a little bit darker. There's definitely a dark force at work in this, and we're really having to kind of deal with some like pretty creepy things, but it's not terrible, and I do feel like it is a great cozy fantasy. And again, I love the wrapping of folklore in this. I learned a lot about Green Teeth as a folklore because I wasn't familiar with it before this. I mean, you can see it's blurbed by T. Kingfisher, who she writes, you know, some little horror adjacent books, and so it is a little bit darker, but still a fantastic cozy choice. And then last, what would a cozy witch book recommendation video be without an Alice Hoffman in there? So I have watched Practical Magic. Probably will not read the book. I have read other books in this Practical Magic series and have not liked them as much and would not include them on this list. But Magic Lessons to me is a great cozy witchy book choice, in that the setting is like seaside towns and New England towns as well, and we do get a homey feel as our main character is like learning ancestral skills that's like deeply rooted in herb culture, and so we have that as a setting. There is again, this is a darker cozy witchy novel in that there are some hard things that happen to our main character, but it is set in the 1600s when witches were persecuted, when there was this double standard where for men who were interacting with women who were claimed to be witches, they sort of seemed to be getting out of, other than John Proctor. Anyway, they were not being held accountable, but then the women were like bearing all of the guilt and getting claimed to be witches. And so we experienced that. I mean, if you watch Practical Magic, you see at the beginning Maria Owens, who ends up cursing the whole town because she gets blamed for man's bad behavior. But this, I just think it does a really great job of knowing that that's what we see, but bringing the backstory and the explanation for how that all comes out. And I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but it does end in a softer tone than what Practical Magic, the movie, starts with. I just do think I loved the descriptions. I thought Alice Hoffman did the best job with this book of any of hers that I have read. And I do think that you can read it just as a standalone. And it was fantastic. So here we have my stack of 10 cozy witchy book choices for you to pick up, not only in autumn, but any time of the year that you get a hankering for cozy witchy books. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.